7 p.m. Tuesday, September 24th, here in Seoul.
And these are the top stories at this hour. Seoul's National Intelligence Service says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may visit South Korea's port city of Busan for a special ASEAN summit in November. It also says Pyeongyang-Washington working-level talks are imminent.
President Moon Jae-in and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump reaffirmed their will to make progress in denuclearizing the Korean peninsula while highlighting the importance of the South Korea-U.S. alliance in maintaining peace in the region.
South Korea will import American LNG in a multi-billion-dollar deal, a move welcomed by Moon and Trump during their summit. Also in store is South Korea's 3-year purchasing plan of U.S. weapons. We have it all covered.
And after months of speculations, it's officially confirmed that the qualifying match for the 2022 Qatar World Cup between the two Koreas will take place in Pyeongyang next month. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Noah.
And I'm Han-Dan. It's great to have you with us. Our top story this evening, South Korea's intelligence agency says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un might cross the border to the south later this year. If denuclearization talks go well, it says Kim could participate in the Korea-ASEAN special summit set to be held in Busan in November.
The NIS also said that working-level talks between North Korea and the U.S. could resume in the coming weeks. Our political correspondent Kim Mo-kyun starts us off.
South Korea's National Intelligence Service says there's a possibility that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could cross the border to South Korea to attend a special summit with members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in late November. After a closed-door session of Parliament's Intelligence Committee Tuesday, main opposition Liberty Korea Party lawmaker Lee Eun-jae quoted Seo-hun, the chief of the NIS, as saying that the North Korean leader could participate in the Korea-ASEAN special summit should denuclearization negotiations go well.
We asked if Kim Jong-un would participate in the special summit in Busan, and he said that depending on the outcome of nuclear negotiations with the U.S., he could visit in November.
As for when the denuclearization talks will resume, lawmaker Kim Min-gi with the ruling Democratic Party quoted the NIS chief as saying that working-level talks on denuclearization could resume in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
The NIS told us that working-level talks between Pyongyang and Washington could resume in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and if an arrangement is reached, an inter-Korean summit could also be held within this year.
The intel agency also said that Kim Jong-un could make a 5th visit to China for a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, given that he met with Xi ahead of his previous 2 summits with President Trump. If he does go, the NIS said it would likely be October 6th, the 70th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea and the U.S. held summit talks in New York, where they reaffirmed their will for successful nuclear negotiations that could lead to the 3rd Pyeongyang-Washington summit. The two also met eye to eye on the importance of ROK-U.S. alliance in the region. Our Shin Se-min is in New York with more.
The top item on the agenda of the 9th meeting between Presidents Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump was, of course, the prospective working-level nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington. The South Korean leader saw President Trump as a major contributor to the Korean peace process. And he expressed anticipation that a 3rd big meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. would be a world-class breakthrough.
조만간 제3차 북미 정상회담을 준비하기 위한 북미 간의 실무 협상이 열리리라고 기대를 합니다. 제3차 북미 정상회담이 열린다면 아마도 한반도의 비핵화의 새로운 질서가 만들어지는 아주 세계사적인 대전환 이렇게 업적이 될 것이라고 믿습니다.
And President Trump also on the same page as his South Korean counterpart, and he boasted of his personal relationship with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
and the relationships have been very good. So we'll see what happens. But we'd like to see if we can do something, and if we can, that'll be great. And if we can't, that's fine. We'll see what happens.
On the regime's launching of short-range projectiles, Trump said his North Korean counterpart is rather a man of his word. Speaking on the Seoul Washington relations, Trump said how South Korea is one of the largest buyers of military equipment from the United States, to which the South Korean presidential office said such business deals will strengthen their bilateral ties even further. Some of the shortfalls from the summit, though, no specific mention of lifting sanctions for the regime or how the trilateral alliance of South Korea, U.S., and Japan fits in with the denuclearization process. Hoping to maintain the impetus for peace on the Korean Peninsula, the South Korean leader will now take his message of hope to the UN General Assembly podium. There, he will share his thoughts on how the major players in the denuclearization talks can bring about lasting peace in the region. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, New York.
The Moon-Trump summit offered some of the biggest hints yet that not only North Korea-U.S. working-level talks, but a third Kim-Trump summit could be on the horizon. Today's summit also signaled more flexibility from Washington on how it plans to negotiate with Pyeongyang going forward. Our Park Hee-jun turned to an expert for more clues.
A third North Korea-U.S. summit coming soon. It's a distinct possibility considering how often the subject was broached during talks in New York between Presidents Moon and Trump. President Moon said a third summit would be a historic turning point that creates a new denuclearization order on the Korean Peninsula. President Trump, while being cautious about fully committing to another face-to-face with Kim Jong-un, expressed hope for such a meeting at the same time, all while downplaying North Korea's recent series of short-range missile tests.
Well, we'll see. Right now, people would like to see that happen. I want to know what's going to be coming out of it. We can know a lot before the summit takes place.
President Moon's remarks on a new denuclearization order and President Trump's openness to another round of talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This adds to what President Trump said last week about pursuing a new method on Pyeongyang, which experts interpret as the U.S. softening its posture toward the regime.
After firing the hardliner former national security advisor John Bolton, Trump has stated that he's willing to restart the talks in a more friendly manner with North Korea. I think that's what the President was referring to right now. So I think it's more about, not so much about the fundamental change in approach towards denuclearization. It's more about commending President Trump for having rediscovered willingness to negotiate with North Korea in a manner that's more amenable to North Korea.
And a similar pattern is emerging to the arrangements that preceded the two previous Kim-Trump summits, raising the possibility of the third summit.
Something similar is happening right now. Probably North Korea and the United States have been in touch, obviously. And given that President Trump is talking about it, it's likely that there will be a third summit soon.
And Kim and Trump are expected to continue their top-down approach to negotiations. President Trump has repeatedly been citing his very good personal relationship with the North Korean leader and the regime's suspension of nuclear testing. With all this and the positive signals sent by Moon and Trump on Monday, there are high hopes summit number 3 will happen, maybe even before the end of the year. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
U.S. President Trump touted South Korea as one of America's largest buyers of U.S. military equipment. More attention is being drawn to this particular remark as Seoul and Washington began their talks in Seoul today on next year's defense sharing costs for stationing U.S. troops in the Korean Peninsula. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks made at the start of the bilateral summit with President Moon Jae-in are widely viewed as implying that the two countries are working well, as the two countries engage in talks on defense cost sharing, initiated in Seoul for 2 days starting Tuesday.
We'll be talking about the purchase of equipment. South Korea is one of our largest purchasers of military equipment.
A South Korean military source said President Trump's statements regarding the purchase usually go in conjunction with defense cost-sharing deals and sees the U.S. trying to pursue national interests and raise South Korea's esteem. This is believed to be part of efforts to quell speculations of rising frustration between the two allies following Seoul's refusal despite Washington's request to renew a military intel sharing pact with Japan last month. A Cheongwon official said President Moon has stressed the sharing of defense costs should be done in a reasonable manner, highlighting the country's contribution in purchasing American weapons during the past decade and the gradual increase in shouldering defense costs. Seoul is currently paying $870 million, a 8.2% increase from the previous year, while Washington is believed to have considered asking Seoul to pay an annual $5 billion. President Moon is said to have mentioned South Korea's proposition in buying American weapons for the next 3 years in light of the envisioned transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. According to data released by the Defense Agency for Technology and Quality in January, the U.S. had sold more than $6.7 billion of weapons to South Korea between 2008 and 2017. This includes a 2014 contract in which South Korea plans to deploy 40 F-35A jets at a cost of nearly $6.2 billion. Also, there's the purchase of 4 Global Hawks high-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles, a scheme worth some $737 million, planned for arrival from the U.S. this December. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea, the world's third biggest importer of liquefied natural gas, will buy more LNG worth multi-billion dollars from the U.S. starting in 2025. The nation's state-run gas company signed a deal today with British oil giant BP. Our Kim Hae-sung has more on this, a move welcomed by both President Moon and Trump.
South Korea will purchase $9.6 billion of U.S. liquefied natural gas over the course of 18 years starting 2025. According to the Trade Ministry on Tuesday, the state-run Korea Gas Corporation has signed an agreement with BP to buy 1.58 million tons of LNG from the U.S. The 15-year deal, which can be extended to 18 years at a seller's option, is the first long-term LNG purchase contract signed between Korea and the U.S. during the Trump administration. President Moon Jae-in also referred to the deal in his meeting with President Trump in New York.
이번 방문 기회에도 미국의 LNG 가스에 대한 한국의 수입을 추가하는 그런 결정이 이루어지고 또한 한국의 자동차업체와 미국의 자율주행 기업 간의 합작 투자가 이루어지게 되는데 이 모두가 한미 동맹을 더욱 든든하게 발전시키는 것이라고 믿습니다.
Data by the Korea International Trade Association shows South Korea is the world's third largest LNG importer and mainly purchases LNG from Qatar and Australia. This latest deal is expected to help Korea diversify its sources of LNG. Bilateral energy trade between Korea and the U.S. has grown 7-fold since 2016, and Korea has been the #1 importer of U.S. LNG since 2018, surpassing Mexico and Japan. The Trade Ministry says U.S. LNG imports are expected to increase from 10.6% in 2018 to near 23% by 2025. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang will purportedly be meeting her newly appointed Japanese counterpart Toshimitsu Motegi later this week. An unnamed source said the meeting will happen on Thursday in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. If realized, the two will likely discuss ongoing disputes on historical issues as well as trade. Kang will also meet her Chinese counterpart on Wednesday morning to discuss issues on the Korean Peninsula. Meanwhile, an official at Seoul's foreign ministry says there are no plans yet of a Seoul Washington foreign ministers meeting or a three-way sit-down with the US and Japan. South Korea has not yet been invited by Japan to its naval fleet review next month. In a text message to the press, Seoul's defense ministry said it will consider attending if it's invited, but so far it hasn't been. Japan holds a fleet review every 3 or 4 years and invites its neighbors and allies. Seoul sent ships to the last one 4 years ago. At the review in October, the US, the UK and China will be taking part. The Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun reported today, citing Japanese government officials, that Tokyo officially decided not to invite Seoul to the event because of their radar dispute late last year. The men's national football teams of South Korea and North Korea will play each other next month in a World Cup qualifier in Pyeongyang, the first match of its kind in 29 years. It'll be on October 15th. The Korea Football Association in Seoul said Tuesday it was notified of the plan by the Asian Football Confederation, which met with North Korean football officials in Malaysia on Monday. Normally, national teams each play a World Cup qualifier at home, but North Korea's refused to host in the past. A KFA official said the South Korean players will most likely get to Pyongyang on a flight from China, and they've already applied for Chinese visas. Another case of African swine fever was confirmed today at a farm in Paju near the inter-Korean border. This is the fourth case so far. African swine fever is harmless to humans but fatal to pigs, so it's a potential risk to pork supplies across the country. As our Kim Jae-hee reports, the government is doing all it can to prevent it from spreading.
South Korea's Agriculture Ministry confirmed early Tuesday the fourth case of African swine fever in the country. This is the second case reported in Paju and comes only a day after the fever was found at a farm in Gimpo, south of the Hangang River, raising concerns over the spread of the fever. A new suspected case also reported on Tuesday at a farm in Gwangak County, Incheon. Inspections are currently underway and the results are expected to be out late Tuesday.
All suspected cases from pig farms in Gimpo and Paju were confirmed to be positive. Now is the time to recognize the urgency of the current situation, and all related authorities must be devoted to quarantine efforts.
The South Korean government is ramping up efforts to prevent any further spread, including slaughtering pigs within 3 kilometers of the farms affected. The Agriculture Ministry has also issued a 48-hour nationwide standstill for all pig farms, feed factories, and slaughterhouses as of Tuesday, 12 p.m. Live pigs from Jeju Island are also prohibited from moving to regions other than Jeju, starting Tuesday. 4 months ago, North Korea revealed its own outbreak of African swine fever. The National Intelligence Service said on Tuesday that African swine fever has completely wiped out pigs in Pyeongan-buk-do province in North Korea. Local authorities are currently inspecting waterways that connect to the north. Starting next month, South Korea's Rural Development Administration will work with Vietnam to discover the root of the spread as preliminary research to formulating a vaccine. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Samsung Display is set to invest almost $11 billion to build manufacturing lines for quantum dot OLED displays as it looks to accelerate the shift to the next generation of display screens. Quantum dots are tiny semiconductor crystals that enable the conversion of blue LED light to red and green to create full-color displays with higher energy efficiency and a wider color range than LCD-based products. Industry sources say the firm will likely officially announce the investment plans next month. Due to falling margins in the LCD sector on fiercer global competition, it has long been forecast Samsung would make the move to the QD-OLED sector. Fitch Ratings, one of the world's main credit rating agencies, hosted a conference in Seoul on Wednesday called Fitch on Korea 2019. And our reporter Hong Yu was there to take a listen to what the agency had to say regarding the credit ratings for countries in the Asian Pacific region, including South Korea.
Earlier in September, Fitch Ratings had revised its global growth forecast due to a sharp escalation in the U.S.-China trade dispute and the increased possibility that the UK will leave the European Union without a withdrawal deal. Such developments have worsened the outlook for world trade as uncertainty observed in trade policies affects spending decisions by the private sector. At the Fitch on Korea 2019 conference, the Associate Director for Asia-Pacific Sovereign Ratings Team at Fitch Ratings said that the agency's forecast for South Korea's economic growth is also lower than the Korean Central Bank's projection.
Fitch forecasts Korea's GDP growth to slow to 2% in 2019 as a result of weaker global demand. Korea's growth in our forecasts recovers sluggishly to 2.3% in 2020 as U.S.-China trade war and uncertainty from trade tensions with Japan weigh on exports and investor sentiment.
He added that the magnitude of the impact the ongoing trade row between Seoul and Tokyo will have on the Korean economy is uncertain and depends on how long the trade war lasts and how complex it gets. But the government's sound fiscal management and steady macroeconomic performance are strengths that help Korea manage growing near-term economic headwinds. As South Korea is an export-driven country, its policies aim to lower the risks that global trade disputes have on the local economy while still increasing economic growth. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
The number of Japanese visitors to South Korea increased by more than 4.5% last month compared to a year ago. According to the Korea Tourism Organization on Monday, the figure came to almost 330,000. In contrast, the number of South Koreans going to Japan was down. According to the Japan National Tourism Organization, around 309,000 South Koreans went to Japan in August, down 50% on year. Many South Koreans are boycotting Japanese products and cancelling plans to travel to the country in protest against Tokyo's recent trade curbs on Seoul. An increasing number of artists are deciding not to participate in a major art festival in Japan in protest against Tokyo's decision to remove a statue representing the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. Japan's Tokyo Shimbun reported today that South African artist Candice Brights notified the Aichi Triennale that she will suspend the exhibition she has there and instead put up a statement of protest. Japanese artist Fuji Hikaru decided Sunday for the same reason not to show his works. The festival had displayed a so-called Comfort Women statue but removed it last month, apparently on government orders. Of the 90 exhibitors, 13 have suspended the display of their works as a result. At the UN General Assembly chamber, leaders from around the world, including President Moon Jae-in, met to discuss the climate crisis and ways to move forward towards a greener world. Yoon Jung-min reports.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called on world leaders Monday for concrete and realistic plans to raise their contributions toward achieving net zero emissions by 2050. His remarks came at the UN Climate Action Summit 2019 in New York, where leaders from governments, business, and civic activist groups gathered to tackle the issue of climate change.
Nature is angry, and we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature, because nature always strikes back, and around the world, nature is striking back with fury.
Praising the 2015 Paris Agreement to combat global warming, Guterres called for no new coal plants to be built after 2020 and pressed for a phase-out of fossil fuel subsidies, aiming for carbon neutrality by 2050. U.S. President Donald Trump, who has scrapped regulations aimed at combating climate change and once called man-made climate change a Chinese hoax, stopped by with Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. There were no remarks from Trump, and he left after listening to remarks by German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In a video message, Pope Francis called for the need to ramp up efforts to mitigate the impact of climate change and face what he described as one of the most serious and worrying phenomena of our time. Other leaders, including Merkel, promised to expand their country's contribution to combat climate change. Among them was South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who has made 3 pledges to combat the issue.
첫째, 한국형 지속가능 발전 목표 수립을 비롯하여 지속가능한 저탄소 경제로 조기에 전환하기 위해 다양한 방안을 모색해 나가겠습니다.
President Moon also called for efforts to clean up the atmosphere.
세계 푸른 하늘의 날 지정을 제안합니다. 대기질 개선을 위해서는 공동 연구와 기술적 지원을 포함한 초국경적인 국제 협력과 공동 대응이 반드시 필요합니다.
Other than those remarks, President Moon promised South Korea will expand its role to tackle climate change, such as doubling its contribution to the Green Climate Fund and hosting a P4G summit in South Korea. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, young Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg delivered an emotional speech at the UN Climate Action Summit, making headlines across the globe. She slammed world leaders for failing to tackle climate change, saying that young people will never forgive them if they don't act on their promises. Our Kim Dami has the story.
Through tears and visible frustration, the 16-year-old activist Greta Thunberg blasted world leaders for failing to save the world against the climate crisis. Her message was direct and powerful that it's wrong that world leaders come to young people for hope when they're missing out on school to fight against a global catastrophe.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
Thunberg then pointed out how the world has ignored the crisis, noting that the science has been crystal clear for over 30 years. She said world leaders weren't meeting their promises.
You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that, because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Urging the world not to fail young advocates, the teenager highlighted there will be no forgiveness and the world is waking up. Over the past year, young activists have staged scattered climate strikes in solidarity with her Fridays for a Future movement. Another strike is scheduled to be held on Friday in New York, with thousands of students expected to take part. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
South Korean universities will soon be allowed to set up campuses abroad. The Education Ministry said today it's going to pass a regulation as soon as next year, allowing them to do that. Campuses overseas will be able to open departments and enroll students in them, whether or not they have corresponding departments in Korea. Until now, universities could not go abroad because there was no legal mechanism under which they could do so. The ministry expects this will enable South Korean universities to open up in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, boosting their global competitiveness. The fall is a popular time to visit Seoul's royal palaces. It's not just the scenic backdrop of the mountains changing color. There's a special chance in the next couple of weeks to see firsthand what it would be like to attend a royal banquet back in the Joseon dynasty. Our Lee Min-sun has more.
The gates of Gyeongbokgung Palace are usually closed when night falls, but over the next 2 weeks, the palace grounds will stay open after sundown to provide visitors with a very unique and exclusive experience. As part of a special program, a handful of guests will be invited to attend a royal banquet at the palace's royal kitchen, along with live traditional music performances. The event will be held at Sojubang, where meals and sweets were prepared for kings during the Joseon dynasty.
Shishikgonggam offers a moving experience through performances and royal cuisine. Unlike other events at the palace that takes visitors on a simple tour, this program offers them a chance to sample unique dishes that were served only to kings while enjoying live performances.
The program is run twice a year during spring and fall. Starting this autumn, sessions reserved only to foreigners will be added, with information being provided in English.
I've been to the Gyeongbokgung Palace in the daytime and only saw the night view in a TV drama. The atmosphere in the palace is very special at night, and it's a unique experience to be able to eat here and watch the performances. I would recommend this to other foreign visitors.
I decided to come here to experience what it was like the emperor was living in the past. So it's very good and it's very delicate, especially the one looks like a flower. I think the king truly has a good life in the past.
The food being enjoyed by visitors is identical to those that were served to kings and queens in the past. The meals consist of porridge, rice cakes, sweets, and tea. Some of them are garnished to create the shape of a flower and are beautifully arranged for extra visual appeal. This year's 시식공감 will run until October 5th and will be held every day except Tuesdays, offering 2 events per day at the Royal Kitchen of Gyeongbokgung Palace. 이민선, Arirang News.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the U.S. and China will resume their high-level trade talks 2 weeks from now in Washington. He was speaking to Fox News on Monday, and he added that the U.S. side will be led by Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and the Chinese side by Vice Premier Liu He. Mnuchin said he's hoping for a deal, but if the U.S. can't get what he called the right deal, it will continue to use tariffs strategically. South Korea's producer prices rose in August from the month before by a moderate amount, a sign of consumer inflation down the road. The Bank of Korea says the production price index came to 103.73, up 0.2% from a month earlier. The central bank said agricultural goods prices rose because of a decrease in supply. Prices of industrial goods, electricity and gas edged up a touch. On year, producer prices in August fell by 0.6%. Samsung has announced a new image sensor for smartphones that it claims has the smallest pixel size in the industry at 0.7 micrometers. The South Korean tech giant said today that its ISOCELL Slim GH1 allows for nearly 44 million pixels to fit into a tiny package, making it optimal for devices that require ultra-high resolution and slim displays. Usually, smaller pixels means less vividness as they absorb a limited amount of light. But Samsung says its latest technology overcomes this problem, allowing for brighter and sharper images. After 4 years, Lionel Messi has retaken FIFA's Best Player of the Year award. The Argentinian forward won the Best Men's Player at the FIFA Awards ceremony in Milan with a total of 46 points, beating Virgil van Dijk and Cristiano Ronaldo. This is the 6th time Messi has been voted the world's best, one more than his rival Ronaldo. Last year, the 32-year-old helped Barcelona win La Liga and reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. He will now go for the renowned Ballon d'Or award, which will be announced on December 2nd. That has been your 3-minute news flash.
It was a warm and comfortable day, but we're seeing the temperature drop quickly in the evening.
It certainly is chilly in the night. For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, good evening, guys. The nation has had comfortable temperature readings with a little bit of breeze, keeping us cool during the day. However, keep in mind that we will see significant temperature drops throughout the night until early morning tomorrow. Now, temperatures will drop low enough to cause a few patches of fog, but these will clear soon after the sun rises. Now, it's going to be another dry and clear day tomorrow here in Korea, so enjoy the weather. Now, we'll see some clouds in the south, but remember the sun is very bright with the strong UV rays, so make sure to put on some sunblock before heading outside. Now, going over to our readings in detail, the mercury will fall into the teens with Seoul and Gwangju waking up to 15 degrees Celsius, while it'll be a couple of notches higher for Busan and also for Jeju. And into Wednesday afternoon, there will be large rises in temperatures as usual. Seoul topping out to 27 degrees, while Busan hits 26 and Jeju reaches up to 25 degrees. In the daytime, will get hotter on Thursday, but it will go back down into the weekend under lots of cloud cover. And there are some chances of rain for Jeju and the southern parts of the country. Now we'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
OK, that will wrap up today's Arirang News Centre. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Keep it tuned to Arirang for news in depth coming up in just a few minutes.